Hey guys, it's Ken Maxfield, the hide guy. I am the owner and the managing editor of the Maxfield Report, and this is our market recap for the week ending January the 9th. The week started out with Packers' offer list a bit of a mixed bag. You had some of the smaller Packers who were reported to not be offering any hides, while some of the bigger Packers reported to either have minimal offers or offer lists that were unchanged with last week, while some of the others had actually more hides to offer. And of course, as it is now the first half of January, the number of jumbo steer hides offered versus regular weight hides are increasing rapidly. There's not as many regular weights being offered. And honestly, that's really not a surprise this time of year. There should be a lot more heavier hides offered. In fact, it actually started a little bit later than it usually does, which that is the point that's surprising. As far as asking prices, Packers were reported to be asking levels that were unchanged with the past few weeks. Packers continue to claim that they're well sold, not needing to do anything, but in private conversations, we're starting to see some fractures develop in the armor of the Packers. And this isn't because they're not well sold. It all comes back to what we've been talking about now going on weeks. There's not enough containers and flatbed trucks available. You're knocking anywhere from 635 to 650,000 animals in a given week. We're shipping less than 500,000 hides for now going on 2 months. The fact of the matter is, folks, they may be sold on paper, but they do not have enough shipments in order to keep hides inside their own building. They're having to put up tents or storage or whatever because they just can't. They got to make room for the next day's kill, and that's what's becoming a real problem. And that's why I've been telling you, those with cash and have the ability to take shipment in a very prompt fashion are able to negotiate prices. So as far as bids last week, the good news was that's probably the most bids Packers have seen in the last 2-3 weeks. A lot of the buyers continue to try to bid prices lower. Packers, of course, on the surface are trying to puff their chest out and say, no, we don't need to take any lower. But sales that are getting done, depending on the Packer, depending on the selection, are drifting a little bit lower. I know Packers will not want me to be able to, want me to know this and to share it all with all of you. But there is definitely some underlying pressure going on in this big Packer market. As far as sales last week, I think things were decent. Did they sell enough to clear the harvest? Which we'll come back to that, but that was slightly over 650. I don't think so. Cows, that action market is a little bit firmer as compared to the big Packer market. Guys are still well sold. Of course, there's not as many cows being harvested in a given week as compared to big Packers animals, but overall, offer lists were minimal. Some guys are even trying to get a little bit more money. What we're hearing is the bids were better as far as the number of bids last week versus the last 2-3 weeks. Some of these guys were able to eke out some incremental price increases depending on the producer, depending on the selection. So overall, I think there's a much better feeling or a much more confidence being exuded in this cow market than there is the big Packer market in the States right now. As far as the harvest, as we mentioned just a minute ago, it came in at 651,000. Of course, you compare it to the week prior, which was New Year's. It's not much of a comparison because it was a holiday shortened week. But if you compare that to last year, it was 643. So we're actually a little behind last year, and that's because last year's number includes 2 extra days of slaughter. So don't be alarmed. I mean, you're going to see in my report it's down 25%. But again, with 2 extra days of harvest, I look for us to be able to catch that up, and especially as we look forward, remembering once we got into April and May, we had all of the COVID issues and plants shutting down and being closed, or you having to run reduced numbers, and we ended up 1,000,001 lower than the year prior. I think this year we're going to have all of that 1,000,001 plus. So you're going to see a number that's going to be probably the end of the day, probably about 1,000,002 by the end of 2021, higher than the year previously. It might even be, up to 1,350,000. But I do think there's going to be more animals because there's a lot of animals standing. Packers are making a lot of money. And we all know when Packers can make money, they'll run the doggone wheels off the bus, and beef demand remains good. So it all is lighting up for them. As far as the export report last week, it was the last report for the year, so it always ends up being a little bit wonky. of course, you had the combination of sales for next year and last year. So if you add together that sales, wet salted sales come in at about, call it 400,000, just rounding. Wet blue sales were not that great, about 125. The problem remains shipments. We only moved 340,000 hides last week. Yes, the kill was 515, but there again, another 150 plus thousand hides that were produced that didn't get shipped. They got to be put somewhere, and that's the whole problem with this market, is they cannot ship enough hides to make room for the animals they're killing today. So let's go around the globe real quick. Down in Brazil, things are dead quiet. They're in their holiday period from Christmas until about Wednesday of last week. Everything shuts down. They celebrate the Christmas holiday, so no change in that market. It's very firm. We'll see what happens here with the cows in the States showing a little bit of an uptick in them. I would suspect that maybe we might see a little bit, tad bit higher prices down in Brazil once they get back to work here. Australia, a lot of folks just coming back from their winter holiday shutdowns. It is summer down there. But overall prices unchanged, limited offers. That's because their harvest levels are still remaining very low. Live cattle prices are through the roof down there, hovering at record levels. Packers are really getting their heinies handed to them as far as a P&L basis. So not a very large harvest. Strong sold forward position. We got to keep an eye, though, on the political tensions between Australia and China, because of the hides that are exported out of Australia, about 99% of them go to China. So if they start to flutz with the tariffs on hides out of Australia, that could pose a pretty big problem for those guys. And in Europe, really no change as to what we've been reporting. Some of our friends tell us that the Chinese have shown some better interest on some bull hides. I liken that to the price of native steers here in the States being very firm. So they're looking at Europe, seeing if they can get something as a substitute. The other selections remaining fairly steady. Any change in the price guide is a reflection of the weakening dollar. But overall, folks remain, appears that they remain well sold. Harvest levels are going higher. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. Usually that European market kind of trails our U.S. market by about 4 weeks. So I think there could be a little bit of pending pressure building up there too. But we'll just have to see what happens. So as we look ahead to this week, I wouldn't be surprised, if we saw more offers from packers. The question is, will they finally concede that the market isn't as strong as they are? Give you an example. Some guys asking as much as 38 FOB for Texas steers, trading around the $30 mark. I think what we need to see is asking prices and sales prices get a little closer here instead of these, $5 to $8 spreads. It doesn't bode well for anybody to know really where the market is when you have these asking prices that are crazy. So harvest is going to remain high. So pressure's on. They're going to have to keep hides moving because they're going to keep knocking animals. And I think for now, until the situation surrounding shipments starts to ease and we get a few more containers, packers are going to struggle to hold prices steady. That's it for this week. Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. We'll catch up to you next week. Oh, by the way, check out our website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. I do offer free 14-day trials. Thanks.